yes, I'm a disability benefits advisor at Citizens Advice in St Albans. I know lots of you aren't anywhere near St Albans, but obviously there are Citizens Advice offices all over the country who can offer, hopefully, and they do vary a little bit, but offer the same kind of services that I do. We're fortunate here that we've got some funding to employ me only 2 days a week. I could be doing it every day, to specifically concentrate on disability benefits. That covers claiming them, challenging decisions, refusals of benefit as well. I'm sure there's a variety of knowledge here, so some of you may be on some or all of the benefits I'm talking about and may be experts in them, and some people possibly not. So apologies if I'm not pitching it at the right kind of level, but do ask questions at the end. And apologies if I'm using abbreviations and things that perhaps people aren't familiar with, but I will try and make things clear. So in terms of, oh, do I need to move this far? Let's move that out of the way. In terms of what disability benefits are, and I've put the abbreviations here, so hopefully if you're not familiar with them, then when I talk about ESA or PIP, it will make sense. So employment and support allowance, that's an income replacing benefit if you're not able to work for health reasons. Universal credit, which in effect covers people whether they can work or not work now. People might be on ESA from an old claim, but if you've claimed a new claim within the past, whatever it is, 5 or so years, then it'll be universal credit, because that's replacing ESA. Just to confuse, new style ESA, which is based on your national insurance contributions, is not covered by universal credit. I wish they didn't call it universal credit, because it's not universal. There are lots of other, it makes it seem like everything is under universal credit, which is not. There are lots of other benefits. So if you've been working and paid enough national insurance contributions in the previous 2 years before you claim, you might be able to get that national insurance based benefit. Disability living allowance, which now for new claims is only for children, although there are some, well, now much older people, I think born before 1948, who may still be on DLA. Most people would now be on PIP, which was the replacement for DLA. So that's a disability related benefit, doesn't have nothing to do with your income, and you can get it on top of universal credit or ESA, or you can get it if you're working. So that may be one of the most important ones for people. Attendance allowance is like PIP, but if you're over state pension age when you claim. Carers allowance, if you're on PIP or attendance allowance and have a carer who cares for you for more than 35 hours a week, they may be able to get carers allowance. It's very low amounts, but it's something for a carer. And the other things we deal with that are sort of related to disability, blue badges, taxi vouchers, if that's something usually your local council does, transport related things. Okay, so a bit more about universal credit, because that's kind of now the main benefit for, as I say, for new claims over the last 5 or 6 years. So it is means tested, and they will look at your household income. So if you have a partner living with you, it has to be a partner, not friend, child, whatever. But if you have a partner living with you, they'll look at both of your incomes. So that does mean some people won't get this. You have to have capital, so savings, property, investments. If we were also lucky to have stocks and shares or whatever it is, ISAs, that has to be under £16,000. There can be some deductions because of savings, but if you've got over £16,000, you can't get universal credit. You start the claim online. That's what they want people to do and encourage people to do. But if you can't do that because of lack of internet, IT skills, whatever it might be, You can make a phone claim, and that's the number. It's Help to Claim is a service offered by, well, paid for by the government, but offered by Citizens Advice. It's a national phone line, so you can call them and they will help you to make a phone claim. They can also advise on universal credit, so if you're wondering whether you should claim it or not, or what you might get, that they also deal with that. On universal credit, the basic position is that you would have a work commitment, so you would be expected to look for work for a certain number of hours a week usually, and apply for jobs that your work coach might send to you, and you would have work search reviews with your work coach, which have been by phone during COVID or was suspended for a period and then by phone. I think, as far as I know, most job centres are going back to in person, coming to the job centre, talk about what you can do to find a job. You get a standard amount, depending on whether you're a single person or a couple. It's not a lot of money, just over £330 a month for a single person. And then on top of that, you can get extra amounts if you have children, if you're a carer or someone in the household is a carer, and also if you've got if you're not able to work for health reasons, which I'm going to talk about a bit more. And if you are earning, or there's someone, a partner earning, 55% of that income is taken off of your universal credit. The idea is that you're encouraged to work. You don't lose all your universal credit because of earnings coming in, but 55% of that is taken off. And if that means your universal credit is reduced to zero because you're in a good full-time job or whatever, then obviously that's it. Your universal credit would stop. If your income's variable, so some months you earn more than others, then you can get no universal credit one month and then get it the next month. So that is an advantage of universal credit. Your claim doesn't stop completely, which is what it did under the old benefits. Right, so this is the more when we get onto disability side of things, or can be if it affects your ability to work. So if you're not able to work for health reasons, you would need a fit note from your doctor. It used to be called a sick note, but it's basically saying that you're fit or unfit for work. And that then triggers the work capability process. So universal credit, as for the other benefits, don't just say, oh, you've got a fit note, we accept you can't work. They do their own process, which is what I'm going to talk about next. Okay, so the work capability process, which would be for universal credit or ESA, because they're the work-related benefits, or not being able to work if for health reasons, and the PIP process, that's personal independence payment, which is the disability one. Slightly confusing all of this, so I apologise, but I didn't make up the system, obviously. They're pretty similar in how they actually work. So starting the claim, we've kind of talked about. If it's a PIP claim, it's started by phone, and if it's universal credit, basically they want you to do it online, but there is an exception for people who really can't do that, who can do it by phone. So, sorry, there's lots here, but I will explain. So on all of these disability related benefits, you have to fill in a long, complicated form, and if you've done one or seen one, it's horrible. And I don't think the form is very fit for purpose, to be honest. It doesn't really direct you adequately to what you need to put on it. And they're very, I don't know, overwhelming, I suppose is the word, because if you get a 30-page booklet to fill in, and, that's a difficult thing to do. The questions for each of these forms are quite similar, though the ESA 50 and the UC 50 are the same. The ESA one is pink and the UC one is blue, but otherwise they're the same. So I would say the points I've put here, I would say get advice or help with it. I think they're difficult to fill in, and how you fill them in can make a difference as to whether you get the benefit or not. Obviously, I'm going to promote Citizens Advice, but there are lots of other groups out there, support workers, key workers, other charities who can help you get some advice. So, you know, I'm not saying you can't do it by yourself, and obviously people do and may have done them in the past, but that's what I would generally say. Medical evidence is really important. I think it's difficult to get any of these benefits without medical evidence. So letters from hospitals, probably better than letters of from GPs, but you don't need to get a specific letter from a hospital. But if you've got letters after you've had an appointment that say, you know, this is the diagnosis, this is the treatment, whatever, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, you can, some of my clients who are not necessarily very well organised and sort of don't have their hospital letters or can't find them or whatever, you are entitled to copies of your GP records for free under GDPR, and they have a month and they have to provide them to you. So I sometimes get clients to say, go and ask your GP for the last 2 or 3 years worth of records. You don't need everything, you know. And if you don't have much other medical evidence, then use that. These are some of the areas where I don't think the form makes things clear. So you're looking at all the various activities that are on these forms, which are things like washing, dressing, lifting, going out, walking, all those activities. It's how things affect you for the majority of the time. Maybe less relevant for the people in this group, but you know, if you have good days and bad days, or things vary for whatever reason, if they affect you for 51% or more of the time, then that's what you should be talking about. I think sometimes people think, oh, well, it varies, and some days are better than the others. If it's more bad days than good days, basically, or you can't do things more days than you can, that's what you should put in, and it's important to do so. And this point about, which DWP often don't consider properly, in my experience, you have to be able to do this is the important word, reliably. So they should take into account whether it's safe, you know, whether you have falls, whether you, I don't know, leave the oven on and so that might be a danger, repeatedly. So you might be able to walk your 50 meters, but then you're wiped out for the rest of the day. To an acceptable standard, and this one's important, a reasonable time. So if you now do something much slower than other people of your age without your conditions, then that should be that you can't do them reliably. So, and the standard they look at is whether it takes you twice as long as it would a person without your conditions. And they also look at things like pain, breathlessness, other things that affect you. I think that's quite can be one that people with health issues don't necessarily think of, because you might think, oh, you know, people are generally trying to be positive and get on with their lives and do what they can do. And you might think, oh, you know, I can manage whatever it is, washing, dressing, walking. But you've got to think, compare yourself to a completely well person. I think that's the important thing, rather than how you were a year ago or 2 years ago, whatever. Obviously, any equipment you use is really important. Anything, you know, mobility wise, in the bathroom, whatever, any equipment you've got, definitely talk about that. This last bit looks a bit complicated because of the link. PIP and in fact ESA and Universal Credit are based on you scoring enough points to get the benefit. Horrible system, very negative. Trying to put people in a box to tick a box to score points. Anyway, I don't like the system. But there are actually documents. In fact, if you just search PIP descriptors, you'll get a link. You'll get the document, and it's basically for each activity. It says, for example, the first one's cooking. Do you need any aids? That will get you 2 points. Do you need do you need someone to help you, whatever. And it just, not that I'm saying you need to specifically look at the points, but I think you can sometimes use some of the wording in those descriptors. You know, you can use an appliance, or only being able to use a microwave, or needing prompting and encouragement to do something. So, I mean, that's a kind of add-on. I mean, I wouldn't, obviously not vital or anything, but I just think if you are looking into whether you might claim a benefit or the information you need, if you can look at those things, that can be helpful. And then the process is you have well, almost always you would have a medical assessment by, so this is health professional. So the DWP, well, they use a private company, a couple of private companies to do the medical assessments. A lot of them are by phone now, but might be in person. They're not doctors, or hardly ever are doctors, the people who carry them out. They're physiotherapists, nurses, occupational therapists. Even if, you know, I've had clients with schizophrenia who are assessed by a physiotherapist, which doesn't seem terribly appropriate, but that's what happens. So you have your assessment, and then you get a decision which will tell you whether you've got the benefit and how much you're going to get, and often how long you're going to get it for before it's reassessed. So that's the process. What do you do if you think the decision is wrong? So you either haven't got the benefit or you haven't got as much as you think you should get. So you can request what's called a mandatory reconsideration. So that is basically DWP looking at their decision again. It says on the letters that you get that you've got to do it within 1 month, and given that at least a week's gone by the time you get the letter, that's very stressful. They only send anything second class. But there is, again, they don't tell you, there is a 13-month backstop date, which means that you can actually request the reconsideration up to 13 months after the decision. You'd have to explain why it's late, but I mean, for me, I'm often saying the client couldn't get an appointment with us until whatever date. I mean, we're really busy. My appointments get booked up in 3 or 4 weeks' time. Or you were waiting, you know, you were having treatment, or possibly there's a mental health element that meant you couldn't deal with it straight away. So don't need a lot of reason, but you'd have to give some explanation as to why it was late. If that reconsideration isn't successful, then you can appeal, and that appeal is to an independent tribunal of a judge, doctor, and usually, depending on the benefit, a disability expert. Again, they tell you to do it in a month, but you can do it up to 13 months, same for the reconsideration. It's a long process. You're probably waiting 6 to 12 months, sometimes more, for an appeal hearing. Well, I put it there that most reconsiderations are refused, most at the first stage, and most appeals are successful. And it's around, well, about, I think the figures, last time I looked, about 80% of reconsiderations were refused, and around 70% of appeals are successful. So quite reversing, but you know, the tribunals don't start from DWP standpoint. They look at whether they think you're going to qualify for the benefit. They do have a doctor. If you've got lots of medical evidence, they will actually have read it, whereas the health professionals who do the assessment haven't necessarily. So I know it's stressful and it's a long process, but it, you know, if you think you've got a strong case, then appealing would be a good idea. I would say try and get some help or advice with it, because it can get more complex, especially if it's an appeal. But in terms of the actual appeal hearing and going there, or in fact they're doing them by phone and video now as well, most people don't have representatives. You don't need a solicitor or even an advisor there with you. You can take a family member or friend, which is mainly kind of for support. It's not a formal court. I mean, I know it's stressful and I know clients get very worried about it, but they are actually quite understanding. And obviously everyone who does an appeal has a physical and or mental health problem. So, you know, they know that people are well, vulnerable is not the right word, but dealing with some sort of health issue, and they are quite understanding. I think, was that all? Oh yes, sorry, if you're successful with your reconsideration or your appeal, then your award is backdated back to the start of when you started the claim. That's primarily for PIP. On ESA and universal credit, you would still be getting some benefit while the appeal went on, but if it's increased, then that increase is backdated right back to the beginning of your claim. Yeah, so I mean, this is only a small part. Awards can go down as well as up on reconsideration or appeal. So if you've got maybe a standard rate PIP award and you think you should have it enhanced, there is the possibility that it could go down. I mean, that's really, really unlikely because they've already given you a benefit, but it is something I have to say to clients. Just, you know, but it's pretty unlikely. Oh, I said that. They can take a long time, as can the initial claim. To be honest, the claims are taking a lot longer than they used to. I've had clients waiting 4, 5, 6 months, even more in some cases, for a medical assessment. It's got a lot worse. They kept blaming COVID, but I'm not sure that's a great excuse anymore. So, but yeah, unfortunately, the whole process, it takes a long time. And that was it. A bit of a rush through, and I apologise. I know there's a lot of information there. It's quite hard to kind of summarise because it is really complicated.